Okay, welcome David Hutt to Ordinary Visionaries. Thanks so much for doing the interview.
Pleasure to be speaking to you, Robert.
You as well. And my first question, as it is for everyone, is David, how are you an ordinary visionary?
And like some other ordinary visionaries, I need to qualify that, particularly since I'm very much into being clear about definitions,
Yeah,
particularly from the science point of view. So all of us are both extraordinary and sub-extraordinary. We're all, to some extent, idiot savants, okay? For
yeah,
some of us, like me, the extremes are more clear, but for others, it may be more muddied.
yeah.
So, in terms of what you're doing, and I've seen some of your work and I appreciate it, the idea of visionary is to take one particular area of life that seems to be helpful and to magnify it. And as somebody who is teaching quantum physics and has tutored a lot and has taught all kinds of things, understanding humility is a great common bond for all of us, regardless of our religious or political or racial or ethnic differences. And so in that way, it's very ordinary. The only kind of humility that's out there, and there's tons of it, are all bounded by certain belief forms. For example, I have a Christian friend who's wonderful, and he's on the Humility Club with me, and he's a magnificent Christian, one of the best Christians I've ever seen in my life. I love him. But he still looks at humility from a Christian point of view. As you probably know, you've probably met Buddhist people who are very humble.
Yeah.
Every religion. Also in 12-step, as you probably know, humility is a key factor.
Yeah.
There are women's clubs that talk about humility. There are men's clubs that talk about humility. But all of those come from a particular belief, which limits what the possibilities are. So I ask everybody, go ahead.
So let's back up a little bit because you mentioned the Humility Club, so we don't have any context for that to begin
Right.
with. So what is the Humility Club?
What it is outwardly right now, and it's only been going on for about 2-3 months,
Okay.
is we get together 5 times a month,
Wow.
and I present something from a poetic, quantum physics, sociology, psychology point of view about humility.
Yeah.
Most of it original. I need to back up a bit. As you know, the default position of some people is that they allow words to come through them, and they're not their words. It's kind of like the Zen thing about no mind, also known as innocent mind.
Yeah.
So that's the case with me. So whatever I say about humility, I don't take any credit for.
Yeah.
Okay. Having
Okay.
said that, the more specific aspect of what we're doing is we meet 5 times. If somebody doesn't make it, of course, from a humble point of view, they're busy. I understand. And part of humility is to recognize the other person has their needs, their space,
Sure.
and to really not only allow it, but to encourage it and to make it clear that I'm not here to sell you anything, to push on anything to try to get my numbers up online or any of that stuff.
I can relate to that.
That's not the purpose of humility.
Yeah.
So anyway, getting back to, and this is my difficulty in organizing, so bear with me. So it's 5 times a month. If anyone's interested, I'll give my email out. I'll, be happy to invite
Sure.
them to a meeting. I'm not charging anything because what I've learned in the 3 months is just about almost as extraordinary as what I've learned with our friend Sal. It's been astounding when you put out, one of the key factors of humility is vulnerability. And when you allow a natural vulnerability to come out, you learn so much about yourself that you didn't even think was there. So the 5 meetings are now changing into, it looks like, naturally, not because I want it to, it just seems where it wants to go. There's humble wealth, there's humble health, and there's humble relationships.
Okay. So might be useful if you give me your most expansive definition of humility.
Sure.
What are you talking about when you say humility?
Okay. I have a note here just in case you ask, because I wanted to be clear. So on the intrapersonal level, looking at us from us, right?
Yeah.
It involves an accurate view of the self, not self-deprecating. One of the great quotes on humility is from C.S. Lewis, who said humility is not thinking less of ourselves, it's thinking less about ourselves.
Right, right.
On the interpersonal humility, it's a stance that it's naturally other oriented rather than self focused. It strengthens social bonds, and it's most accurately judged when it's under strain. And can I give you a little story that's happened in this humility time for me?
Sure.
Beverly and I were on vacation in a very an island off of South Carolina, a very calm, non-urban kind of island, laid back. And I saw, as I'm driving on a side street, a small little side street, I noticed some blue lights. And I figured, well, that's a cop, right? So I slowed down. I was over the speed limit. And of course, I speeded up afterwards. So the cop pulls me over. And for the first time in my life, Robert, I said, I was a complete effing asshole. Okay? I deserve the ticket. I know this is a side street. I was going too fast.
Yeah.
And I meant it. For the first time in my life, I was not trying to get out of a traffic ticket. That's one little example. And he let me go. And I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know what he was going to do. It's the I don't know that's so much a part of humility. The only things we know in humility are A, I am, and B, I know that I am. Everything else is up for grabs. So it was such a beautiful thing because I sincerely meant it. I wasn't doing that to try to get off the ticket by being falsely humble. I meant it.
Yeah, you were telling the truth about what had happened.
Yeah, and one other thing about it. So this is a side street where there are people going occasionally on golf carts. There are older people on bicycles. It was a damn good thing. It was a 30 mile an hour. You know, I could see people getting hurt.
Yeah.
And this wouldn't have come up until I delved into this whole humility thing, Robert.
Yeah. Let's back up a little bit to a word that is used very differently by lots of people. You could ask a lot of people. It's the word self, yourself. So how, in this context, are you defining self?
Okay. So one of the things that was very clear from the inner experiences, or what Albert Einstein would call the thought experiments that Sal did with us, was that I have no free will whatsoever. There are only impulses that come through me and that come from various places. And that's a whole thing, which a whole hour get into, but I know you understand that.
Yeah.
And also, if I'm not the doer, I can't take credit for things. But on the other hand, I don't have to debit myself either.
Yeah.
And so the humility thing has reinforced that so much. It's like a lot of times when you're not sure of something, Robert, you'll say perhaps rather than making a strong statement.
Sure.
And the perhaps now is kind of in my DNA. It's just there. Even if I don't say it, the feeling of perhaps is there. So the self, I have a poem that I share it. That's why I want to bring poems, because you know I'm a poet. So the self comes and goes. You can call us wavicles, okay? I'm using kind of a quantum physics term. Sometimes we're a wave, sometimes we're a particle, sometimes we're neither, and sometimes we're both. When we are totally asleep, not even dreaming, right? We're not there. So you know the whole thing, like if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? Do you know my answer to that?
Who knows?
There's no tree, and there's no forest. That's the answer. Because in quantum physics, it's the consciousness that has to show up before you see anything.
Yeah.
So anyway, here's the poem. Are we loosely stapled collations? When deep sleep enwraps, not a speck of consciousness, utter void, is there a human sleeping? Waking envelops without us willing it. We're back in the same movie we dreamt we owned yesterday. Are we granular collages? Collations cobbled by gossamer paper clips? A billion flimsy spider webs to one part horse opera? That's it.
Very good. So let's keep talking and get into the subject, because self and humility, I mean, Um, we often think of ourself as our mind and our personality,
Right.
our emotions, our thoughts,
Hmm.
our, Robert is a certain kind of way. And this is the tricky thing about words and definitions, And when I say myself, I'm usually talking about this body, mind, emotional complex, whatever it is. But then the more spiritual definition of self with a capital S is just aware, the now, the all that is self. And there's no ego in that, there's no mind in that. It's just aware in the moment. So when we're so it seems that if we're humble, we're more identified with the larger self, not the personal egoic self.
Right. But not being proud of being identified with the larger self.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like, oh, I'm so enlightened.
I'm
That
so humble. Look at me. Aren't I
I'm
the
so
humblest
hungry.
person in the room?
I'm so aware as I walk across the street and get hit by a car because I'm focused on how great I am or
Are
whatever
you
it
familiar,
is.
Robert? Are you familiar with the term operational definition? This can be helpful.
No.
Okay, this is helpful. So, an operational definition is just within this operation, this is how we're defining things. So, within the human operation, we define things that it appears that we have choice, that it appears that we're the doer. And I'm comfortable with that now after
Sure.
Sal, you
Sure.
know, but I recognize it's an appearance. So, words come through me, they're not totally not me and they're not totally me. And I'm okay with that. And I don't need to define it past that. So the operational definition of enlightenment is silence, as Sal talks about. You see, there's nothing to talk about. It's not that nothing exists, but there's nothing to talk about. If you want to define silence, you can make an operational definition for that. And as you know, silence can include all kinds of sounds. So I'm just trying to give you an analogy here.
Yeah. So when you're exploring, obviously you're meeting 5 times a month. 5 times a month, right?
Yes.
Why five instead of four?
It just came up. I told you my organizational ability is honestly not very high. That's just what showed up.
Okay. So yeah.
Well, I'll give you an answer. No, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an answer. Twice a month is for an hour, which is we allow networking, and my friend Paul has. You can break into small groups and all that kind of stuff, as you're familiar with from business networking.
Sure.
The other once is a Saturday, and the two other times are Monday during the work week. So somebody usually can make one of the 5 meetings if they want to.
Right. Yeah. That's adds flexibility. I get it. Okay. So I the whole topic of humility is really interesting. So uh does one do you find one needs to make some kind of effort to be humble? That is, so I notice for myself, um, well, just this whole issue of having conversations with people. I have a friend. I won't get into the details of our relationship, and we have a good friendship. We see each other every day. I walk my dogs, and when I walk my dogs, I see him. We sit down, we talk for a while. We both have a good sense of humor. We joke with each other a lot. But he's not a great listener. And so sometimes that's a little bit frustrating. But for me, being humble is not making it a problem that he's not a good listener. Because if he should be a good listener in my assessment, then I lose humility, i.e., I'm better than him because I'm a good listener. And so to have humility in his presence and enjoy our relationship, I just let go of that and just have fun with him. And he's someone who's disabled, and so he needs a little bit of help. He lives in an RV.
Mm-hmm.
I took him to the Social Security office yesterday because he needed transportation there, and we just had we just had the best fun cracking jokes as we're sitting there, and he's very sharp, he's very funny. We have a sort of similar kind of sense, so we're just cracking each other up, and that kind of natural being with each other, not trying to impress the other or show how you're better or give someone advice. You know, here's someone that needs help in many ways, but to give advice is not really helpful, you know? So
Yeah.
I'm sort of open to what he needs and how I can serve him.
From a
And
counseling point of view,
yeah,
there's a huge difference between advice and suggestion.
yeah,
So humility suggests, arrogance advises.
yeah,
See? And I don't know, we could be best friends for 50 years, Robert, and I still wouldn't know your response to a particular point.
yeah.
So I'm open to hear it. I've had problems. I tend to be interrupting people too, being somewhat autistic. So it was a great example you gave. And do you remember the great Billy Joel song, I Love You Just the Way You Are?
Oh, yeah,
That's it. That's humility.
yeah. Well, the other day I was writing about acceptance. You know, I do this thing with Chat GTP. I say, I would like 25, 50 quotes on acceptance from wise people, et cetera, et cetera. And pow, you have them in 2 minutes, you know. And so acceptance and humility kind of go hand in hand. Just things are the way they are. Now, as being an entrepreneur, being a guy who got a lot of stuff done,
Who
um,
appeared to get a lot of stuff done.
stuff happened. A lot of projects happened.
Yes.
Ideas came into my head and I found myself pursuing those, right?
Yeah.
You know, so, um, but are you familiar with Byron Katie's work?
Yes.
You know, that was very catalytic, and I discovered that about 20 years ago. I read her book. I started to use it with my clients. It was all about questioning your beliefs. But, you know, all of these sort of explorations deepened my understanding that the ultimate thing, and I think it's very closely aligned to humility, is just you are the way you are. I am the way I am. And to accept my manifestations, it's very hard for a lot of people, right? I should be different. So as soon as we're saying should to ourselves, I should be this should be that way, Trump should be this way, Biden should be that way,
The
blah,
world
blah,
should be
blah.
this way.
Yeah.
My wife
And
should be that way.
oh yeah, especially that, right? She's my spiritual teacher that way.
Yes.
That's
Anyway,
right.
I
But
have a poem just about that. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I tend to do that. I apologize.
yeah, it's okay. Just let me complete my idea. So the thing of just daily going, oh, this is just what it is. Just what it is. But usually we're not doing that.
No,
Usually we're going, oh, it would be better if it was like this, if they would do that, if I would do this. And it sets up a situation where we're not at peace with things. You know,
exactly.
we're just not at peace with stuff.
Yes. And a friend of mine, I shared, she said, well, really, what's your basic view of the world? I said, I'm passionately in love with what is. Passionately in love, not
Yeah,
mildly, passionately in love, because I'm aware I could die in the next day.
yeah,
I can't prove to you that some idiot who's drunk isn't going to drive 90 miles an hour into my car and kill me. I can't promise you that won't happen.
yeah,
Um, in quantum physics, you might have heard of Heisenberg's principle of uncertainty.
yeah,
It is so ridiculously true in life and in physics. It's amazing. But anyway, I wanted to share with you the should stuff because you're interested in that.
yeah,
So this is a poem called The Vampire Named Should.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Love it.
Vampire, aka Should, Squats in cobwebby mansion. Chews on dad's crusted finger pointings. Guzzles mom's guilt water. Burps fetid judgments. Blooding guileless necks. Squabbles at family reunions. Teases sister could. Punches brother would. Evicted his ass 7 months back. Spaciousness remodeled the place, breezing in with down payment of newly baked blueberry pies, golden retriever puppy, George Carlin shtick, Beethoven's last quartets. If visiting, leave those 3 siblings home, but bring your red dancing shoes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
So when one evicts should, you get the sense that all kinds of wonderful things can
Yeah, and you
come
did
into
that. The
your life.
spaciousness, just what you did with your hands.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big music fan, and almost to the point of pathology. I collect jazz, and but I also like other music as well. And I'm finding myself broadening my interest. Like I hear a certain kind of music, and I go, yeah, let's delve into that. That as opposed to, I like this. Now that's fine that you like this, but I like this, which means I don't like that. This is the best way. I do it this way. All these kinds of rigid sort of boxes that we put ourselves into.
So your eye is melting, you see?
Yes.
Like kind of the Wicked Witch of the West, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but nothing wrong with preferences. Preferences are
No.
just, they come out of conditioning, and if you like it, you like it. But when you are just open to what is, I went to a little place down the road called the Brookdale Inn, and they have music there on Saturdays, and it's free. It's great, and this wonderful band who's playing Cuban music and stuff, and I got up and started dancing, and I felt like a freaking teenager. It was just so fun, and I have playlists of Cuban music now, and
That's great. That's great. Exactly.
and it's like just these little things like our preferences, and we're so addicted to our preferences as opposed to holding them kind of loosely. Like
Exactly.
for instance, I don't collect or listen to much vocal music. Nevertheless, there are, especially in jazz, because I'm mostly into jazz,
Yeah.
there's so many amazing vocal artists in jazz. And so when I hear it, I don't have to go, oh, that's not my music. I can just hear it, just enjoy it. And there's so much. So any music is something that you can meld with and enjoy and be in the moment, whatever the heck it is.
I'm with you 1,000%. And by the way, you can look at jazz as a very humble music because one note doesn't know where the other note's going to go.
Well, not totally, but sometimes. Yeah, I don't want to bore people about why I like jazz, but
I get it. It's great.
And another thing that I think is interesting, and tell me what your thoughts are about this, is if we look at our life, how we've proceeded, it's sort of like one thing has led to another thing has led to another thing. And, one day in 1970, I was reading Rolling Stone magazine. I was 18 years old. But Rolling Stone had only been out a year. And there was a review for Miles Davis's Bitches Brew.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a passionate review, I said, I got to check that out. So I did. I bought that album. And it's like it took the top off my head. It just blew my mind. I was
Hmm.
into rock music and the Grateful Dead and the Beatles
Hmm.
and the Stones, and then from that moment on, I got into jazz, and I've been collecting it now for 50 years. So it's like, what if I hadn't read that review? I just find it so interesting that, what if this had happened? What if that hadn't? What if I'd done this? What if I'd done that? Who knows? So our lives are just this sort of unfurling from various events that happened by happenstance.
And they
So,
couldn't have happened any other way.
and yet, yeah, because that what happened is what happened. Yeah, and what happened to you is completely different than what happened to me. Some
Yes.
people heard another kind of music and they really got into that. I saw the movie Buena Vista Social Club. Did you ever see that? Well, now by happenstance, you've heard that. You should check it out, probably online.
Hmm.
It's about this musician, Ry Cooder, that goes to Mexico to find some musicians to create an album. He finds all these old singers and Cuban musicians that hadn't been playing for years, and he puts them together, and it's just like
Sounds good.
this explosion, and it just features all of them, and then they created albums, and I bought all those albums and got into Cuban music, just for because I discovered that thing.
So
So
one of the go ahead.
so what is all that? What so how that relates to humility, it seems to me, is, see, sometimes I'm kind of proud that I'm a jazz lover.
You're not like most people, right?
Yes, I'm not like most people. I have refined taste. I'm better, all that kind of stuff, as opposed to, wow, all music is potentially great. All music is enjoyable. All music is whatever. And if someone loves a certain kind of music, now I'm saying, tell me what you really love. Why do you love it? How did you get into it? And a lot of people don't have a deep, abiding passion for music like I do, but some do. And it's like fascinating. Oh yeah, I like 17th century Spanish,
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah.
classical guitar, blah blah
Yeah.
blah, whatever. How'd you get into that? So it's like the world is there to be um, taken in, explored, enjoyed, savored. And there's 10 billion more than 10 billion,
Yeah.
trillions of possibilities. So,
So one of the things in quantum physics is that causality is only a flickering thing. It's not that it doesn't exist, but it's such a fraction of what is that it's almost like there's no causality. And again, I can go into that for an hour. I'm just trying to give you the 1 second,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
summary.
yeah.
So there's really no cause and effect. And what I always tell people is, if you think you're in charge of your life, the fact you're all quanta. Have you figured that out? You know the great, brilliant book, Horton Hears a Who, Dr. Seuss?
Yeah.
So you can
I
look
don't
up.
remember the complex plot.
No, it's very deep. I know, 700 pages. But so Horton, you can think of as like an Einstein or like a Heisenberg or like one of these people.
Yeah, yeah.
And what do they hear? They hear the sound of the quanta. They hear the quantum universe, which is what we are composed of. And how many people say, well, I'm in charge of my quanta. I'm going to tell my quanta what to do. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's a complete mystery.
As if you could. As if you
Yeah.
could get your cells in your body to align up in a certain way, right?
Yeah, to 10 to the minus 43rd. Yeah, exactly. And being a 400 minus 400 degree, computer, like quantum computer. Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, to get back to humility. So here's a beautiful thing. You know the phrase, when more than two or more of you is doing in his name, there is love.
Yeah.
Well, putting
Yeah.
aside the word his, okay. When two or more people are jazz aficionados, doesn't the jazz grow? Doesn't it deepen? Doesn't it dance more when you find a jazz aficionado? Because you almost don't have to talk. There's this connection.
Yeah.
So when there's 2 or 3 or 5 people that are truly humble, you can't teach humility. It cannot be taught, but it grows naturally and wonderful things come from it. And when we give up the idea that we're in charge of anything, things come to us that we never could have imagined.
Yeah. The It's something I think a lot about these days, that the when one is, I guess you could say, in a space of humility, you could also say a space of acceptance, and even, as I wrote the other day, a space of just patience.
Yes.
Patience. All of these things are somewhat related. Um, I often feel that the world is just coming to me, and it's coming to me in the only perfect way it could be. So this is uh, I have had a big issue in my life, and the issue is I don't like disorganization and messes. And that's true for a lot of people. But for me, it's, who knows where that came from my parents, from my whatever, right? So I walk into a room, and if it's messy, it's like a trigger for me, right? It's like, ugh. So I want to tidy things up, and if I walk into a really messy home, that's really hard, really hard. So, a lot of my work these days has been to, accept the mess. Just,
How about
oh,
redefining it, Robert?
yes, yeah,
How about redefining it? Instead of a mess, consider it infinite possibilities.
yeah, which it is.
Doesn't that sound better?
Yes, yeah. But here's the interesting thing, and essentially my wife is the messier one, and I'm the tidier one. And so this is, some of these deeply ingrained um, tendencies, um, they can last for a long time. It's not, it's like we have these quirks and these issues that last our whole lifetime in some
Yes.
cases, and I was realizing was causing a lot of conflict in our relationship. And so one is, if the place is messy, just relax. Just relax. All the things are just where they are, not where I think they should be, but they're all just there. The other is just go and calmly tidy up the other
Yes.
person's mess in the kitchen
Yeah,
or whatever. It's like,
absolutely.
just whatever. And
But as Sal said, those relationships, like me with Beverly, that's our guru.
yeah,
And I understand that. And the third time's the charm with me.
yeah, I was
So the
muting my
third
phone.
time's the charm in terms of my two major relationships. And Bev, who I met just a few years ago, here's one of the great synchronicities. She has an all but dissertation in, guess what? Brilliant boys on the spectrum. She can deal with my mess, not in various ways, because she
Right.
understands it. And I'm blessed. She said you'd be interested in talking about relationships. So she said she had one criterion. By the way, she's a brilliant playwright, among other things. She's wonderful. She said, the only criterion I basically have is I can't be bored. He can't be boring. And my joke is, I bet she wishes she were a little more bored. So, it's a great lesson for us to say that we love somebody and then to
Yeah.
criticize them. It's pretty intense lessons.
Oh, yeah. So tell me more about the kinds of things you discuss in the Patients Club. What kind of stuff comes up?
Sure.
I mean, these kinds of things I'm talking about, or other
Yeah. What
completely
it is
different
like,
things.
for example,
Or not, I
vulnerability.
said the
Okay.
patient. I said the Patients Club. I mean the Humility
I
Club.
understand. It's okay.
Yes, right.
So, some people occasionally will kind of throw in their Christian stuff, and I'll say, look, this is a place of safety from all beliefs. We are living humility. We aren't talking about it except indirectly in terms of saying, look at this, look at that. Here, let me just grab something here. When humility really takes hold of our lives, and this is what happens in the club, when the certainty that we cannot truly know anything more than you know you are, we begin to taste the sweet wine of freedom. There's a freedom in this humility. When you can be vulnerable, and I can be vulnerable, and she can be vulnerable, and he can be vulnerable, wonderful things happen. Life tends to let us let go of the stuff that it has to be neat, or it has to be not boring, or whatever the trigger that we have. And when humility is in charge, there can be no self-judgment nor the judgment of others. The certainty of not knowing blows away pointing our fingers at anyone. We naturally become free from past mistakes and free of future worries. It's just a natural thing. So it's not like we're saying this is how to be humble. So as a specific example,
that's tricky. That's one of the tricky things, isn't it? Because as soon as we have techniques about it, we lose the humility, and humility is just, it's a wide openness to what is.
So as long as I'm speaking not from David, but through whatever, when the words come, from no mind, which is the default state, like Sal says, it's not 100%. For me, it's not anywhere near 100%, but the fact that it's more than 50% is one of the greatest joys in my life.
Yeah. By the way, you keep mentioning Sal, and people are going, "Who's Sal?"
I'm sorry. I thought we talked about that at the beginning, but I guess not.
But that wasn't recorded.
I'm sorry. So let me just qualify that. So Robert and I know each other because we both learned something from Salvatore Poe, you can check out, POE if you're interested. So let's just let that go so we can talk about our stuff and give him credit for having given us some really great tools and lessons and freedoms.
Yep.
Thank you. So I, like you, have a love affair with music. I was born, as many people are, listening to this sweet inner sound. And so I didn't realize that. It took me on kind of a very strange journey for a long time. But I dance like you do. I dance to music from the 60s and 70s, which helps keep me young. And it's one of the great exercises, too. So we share the love of dance.
Yeah.
And the line that just comes up to me, and the magic's in the music, and the music's in me.
Yeah. What's that from?
Do you believe in magic? John Sebastian. Love and
Spoonful. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have that on a playlist.
I was at we have an 82 group, house group here, and we do together. I do some keyboard stuff. And so for the 4th of July, I wanted to play a song that represented all the old people here who are dying or can't make it here, and the sorrow we have for them. And you might appreciate the song I sang.
Yeah.
I Shall Be Released
by
Bob Dylan, one of the great generic spiritual songs I've ever heard.
Yeah.
So music frees us. You see, it frees you too.
Wasn't that on the first band record?
Yes, the band did a cover of it. You're right.
That's when I first heard it.
Mm-hmm.
Way back in the 60s.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as we get older, we can appreciate it. Oh, and death. Let's talk about death.
Oh, let us talk about death.
Yes, because without the full acceptance of the fact that this body-mind could go tomorrow, particularly as we get older.
Yeah.
Humility can't flower. Life can't flower.
Yeah.
And so every day I'm conscious of that, but not in a negative way, in a joyous way.
Yeah.
Isn't the bottom line, and this is what it's for me, I'm interested in your take on this, Robert. The bottom line is that something cannot come from nothing.
Yeah.
But we're here. I don't know. Beats the hell out of me.
I ponder about these things sometimes, and they often don't get very far, but
so this humility thing is taking on. I ended up meeting somebody who feels like a sister from another mother through this.
And
I ended up meeting a guy from India who is now attending Paul. Paul is the one who hosts this, my friend Paul. his men's club, Christian men's club meetings every morning, and he was a non-Hindu. You know, there are a lot of non-religious people all over the place, but he's learning this very loving Christianity. It's such a rare thing, and he is a great crypto person. And so we're working something out where most of the money, we're going to do this together, and most of the money from the crypto, because really quick story. So he did this for a while, and he had such greedy people around him that it almost drove him crazy because he had a good heart. You understand?
Yeah.
You know, you're too good at something, it can kill you. You probably have chapter and verse on that in your life. So anyway, we're doing this thing together called Humble Wealth, and he's going to give them a tremendous return. But we're hoping that there'll be a lot more money beside that. And 70% of that is going to go to the best charities that the three of us know.
Great.
That came out of this whole humility thing as one example.
Great. You know, when I retired last year, it's been almost a year. And after a few months, it evolved into doing my ordinary visionary thing. I said one of the things about this is there's no effort to make any money with this. It was just a gift, something that I would do, enjoy, give to the world. I would never have ads on YouTube. Nothing. Don't have to generate any money whatsoever. Whenever, you know, I taught people how to attract clients. That was my business for 40 years. And to do that and stay honest and clear and be clean in your transactions, but still there's the chasing of money. You know, we're chasing money and trying to. It's so great to be free of that.
Yes, and that's great that you're in that place. Congratulations, that's a wonderful freedom.
Yeah, I feel very lucky because not everybody gets there. Some people have to work to the day they die. You know, I had invested money, I have some Social Security, you know, and I'm okay. And so this thing of finding something to contribute in almost like a hobby that you really enjoy, but putting it out into the world, and you know, and being humble about that, not. This is the greatest thing in the world, and you should get this, and everybody should sign up, and blah, blah,
The word
blah.
should. See how it comes up again.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's just, let's explore. What are you, it's like this conversation. What are you into? What are you exploring? What's the difference you're making? And this is a great one, and really, really interesting.
I'd like to go into wealth a little bit because money has not been an issue. So
yeah. I
am at the point where I accept, again, if I know I'm going to die tomorrow, what's the sense in trying to make $2,000 today? What's that going to do for me? Nothing, except irritate me.
Yeah.
So I'm doing the stuff that it isn't that I love, it's the stuff that life loves, and I just dance with it. That's the best I can put it. And so wealth is not mere money. Money is very important in this world. I don't minimize it. I've struggled with it most of my life. Yeah. But there's also emotional wealth. The allowing feelings to come through us. And you know that feelings come through us and they go. And when they come through us, it's lovely. And if it's a painful feeling, we accept it and we know it's going to go sooner or later. But I think one of the key misunderstandings that people have of wealth, particularly as we get older, is temporal wealth. That time, that like, you look pretty healthy, I look pretty healthy, but maybe from the actuaries, they would say, David, you're going to live 8 years and 12 months, and Robert's going to live 9 years and 2 months. I don't worry about it, but I'm just saying there's a limitation to that. Yep. And so appreciating the time that you're doing what you love is so important. That's wealth, that you can do what you love. That's wealth for me. And you know that, again, our friend Sal talks a lot about enough. I have enough. Doesn't mean that if somebody hands me $5,000, I won't say thank you. But I'm not going to manipulate that person. I'm not going to play with how brilliant I am and they should give me the money, how wonderful I am and I want to invest it here. I'm through with that. That takes away from this moment now.
Let's talk a little bit about accumulation. You know, this world is all about more and more stuff,
Yes. Yes.
and I am subject to it, and to some degree, I have pride about it. I have pride that I have such a big jazz collection. It's just
Of
it's
course, it's a normal kind of human
it's
thing.
a normal kind of human thing, and but in a sense, any of that separates me from the joy of of see what joy does it inherently give me to have 7,000 jazz albums on my hard drive, which I do. There's no, there's, it's just such an ephemeral, it's like, okay, big deal. Where there's joy is enjoying the damn music, right?
Yes. And I would say that you don't have it technically the way I see it. You don't have those 7,000. They have you.
Yes,
Except when you're into it, listening to one, and there's no haver, there's no doer, there's just the listening.
yes, exactly. But it's like, oh, I need more. I need the next album. I need this.
And
I
where does
need
that
that.
come from?
Yeah, feeling of lack. You know, the did a lot of study around the Byron Katie process. It's like the ultimate belief for so many people is I'm not enough. I'm not okay. So what do we have to well, we have to fill that. I have to add stuff to me. I have to have better clothes. I have to have more stuff. I have to, all of that stuff, which is, it's so illusory. There's a reality to it. We like to have comfortable surroundings. We like to have decent food and all that stuff. But it's like the way we hold it in our mind is kind of, it's not healthy.
And underneath that, I think for a lot of people, perhaps, is the fear of death. So that if I have more, I won't die. Almost being emotionally silly about this, but I think,
Yeah,
it's like if I
yeah,
have more, I won't die so easily. They can't get me. Death can't get me. Disease
yeah,
can't get me.
yeah, yeah. But it gets us all sooner or later.
Yeah. And so recognizing it now and still being in love with what is, to me, is part of whatever quote enlightenment, unquote, whatever the heck that means.
Yeah. Um, Many people are waiting for something, and it could be anything, something. And when I have that something, or I'm able to do this, then I will be happy. And I think the thing that we both learn from our spiritual pursuits and Sal's work, etc., is this is fucking it.
Exactly. I have a poem called Fuck It, Fuck It, Tuck It in a Bucket, Chuck It in the Deepest Sea and Let the Ocean Suck It.
Yes, exactly.
But you see, the awareness that you have of it, to me, indicates that as quote time goes by,
Yeah,
you'll listen to jazz album number 3012, and you won't worry about if it's 3,000 or 7,000 because you're so into the music that it doesn't matter that you have 7,000 others. Who cares? You're into
yeah,
the music at that moment.
yeah. It's interesting because one of the things that I do to enjoy my jazz is I create playlists.
Yeah,
And being retired, I've had more time to refine and curate my jazz,
of course.
and that's fine. And but not fine if you're not listening to it. Look, I have 278 playlists. So what if I'm not listening to them? And now
Have
I'm
you ever thought about teaching jazz?
no, no.
I'm just
I'm
saying it's a possibility. If you love it so
yeah,
much, I'm not, because I'm a natural teacher, so I'm not telling you what
yes.
to do.
Well, I've done some writing about jazz. In fact, the first 3 months after retiring, I spent 3 months writing a series of articles on jazz.
Mm-hmm.
called 72 Jazz Thrillers. I identified 72 albums that were my favorite albums, and I wrote about those albums.
Are you familiar with OLLI, OLLI, Osher Lifelong Learning Institute?
No.
It's a national thing. There's one. I'm teaching the physics course there. I'm not charging. It's a free. It's out of love. It's something I love to do. And the quantum physics allows me to touch on spiritual stuff that other people wouldn't be able to hear, but they hear it in that way.
Yeah.
If there is a place around you, I'm just suggesting this because it's not teaching, it's being jazz. I think there are people out there who like jazz who would appreciate your expertise. I'm just suggesting this again, whether you do it or not, I don't care. But it would be if you love it so much, then the 7,000 albums have a place to dance. You see?
Yes. Yeah. You know, there's a saying, writing about music is like dancing about architecture. So I find writing about and talking about jazz is, so the thing about jazz is just listen. It's about
Yes, but
listen.
that's what you do. Forgive me.
Yes.
I'm very enthusiastic about this,
Yes,
whether
yes,
you do
yes.
it or not. So I'm only interrupting you because I can see you doing this. No, you don't teach jazz. What you do is you share jazz. So Beverly is going to, my partner is going to an OLLI course here, which is about lyrics in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
What does he do? 80% of the class is just listening to it, not him telling you how brilliant it is.
Yes,
so can you
yes,
imagine if you had a small class, it doesn't matter if there's 10 or 100, and you're sharing, let's say, in an hour apiece for 5 days, just little bits and pieces of the greatest jazz you know. I can't imagine you wouldn't enjoy that.
Yeah. Who knows?
Just a thought.
It could happen. Thanks for seeding the idea for me.
Sure.
It's, an album came out. It was one of the first albums I bought in 2024 by a wonderful sax player named Amanda Gardier, who's married to my favorite jazz guitar player, Charlie Ballantyne, and he also plays on the album. And I got it, downloaded it, started playing it, and I don't know, it just I started to cry. Every song made me cry. Now,
well, being autistic, I can relate. Okay, happens to me a lot too.
That's pretty unusual for it to have that kind. So every time I listen to it, every song, and it's called Auteur, inspired by the movies of Wes Anderson.
I want AUTEUR.
Yeah, Auteur.
Thank
Music
you.
Inspired by the movies of Wes Anderson.
Gotcha.
And Wes Anderson's movies are quirky, fun, interesting pieces of art. And so every song relates to a particular movie. And I don't know, it's just extraordinary. It's so fun and alive so But to get to that place of listening to something, anything, or tuning into life in any way, that's humility. I mean, to let it come into you, whatever it is.
Fully and deeply and passionately being in love with life.
Exactly. Totally and absolutely. I live in a pretty amazing place. I live in the redwood forest. There's a river out my window in my backyard. On the other side, we have the redwood forest, like a cathedral. I look up at these great 150-foot trees right in my friggin' yard here. And it's just, I didn't want to buy a house. I've told this story before. I didn't want to buy a house. My wife said, we got to buy a house. I said, okay, let's look. Anyway, this is the short version. And we saw this house. And I went from not wanting to buy a house to, we got to have this house. And then she said, I don't know if it's right. No, she went into her mind. I was just like, how how often do you find a house in the redwood forest with a river in the backyard with an amazing deck, et cetera, et cetera? So there's so many wonderful things, and for that to come to me and us was a miracle, you know. And yet there's that kind of stuff every day in our lives. It's not just, well, um, there's people up the road, people we just met recently, and they have an even better house. It's more beautiful. It's more amazing. You know, and I came back and I said, I don't like our house anymore after their house. Well, that went away after. It was just like, so we're always comparing, and this is better, and I want this, and I need this, as opposed to, hey, whatever's coming, it's great.
And the least bit of comparing, the least bit of it,
Yeah,
is fear and arrogance and the non-acceptance of what is.
exactly. What is it in your life that you pushed away or didn't have acceptance about or struggled with or didn't like that you learned to embrace?
Well, I'm autistic and I have ADHD. Okay.
Okay.
And the joke is, we need to laugh. I'm not as smart as Elon Musk, but I'm not as crazy as Rain Man. So that gives you a sense of me. So when I was young,
Yeah.
I felt I was Valentine Martin Smith in Stranger in a Strange Land. And some of my poems reflect that. And I have one I want to read to you because it'll give you a sense of who I was and how crazy I think these pronoun wars are now.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
called, you're going to laugh, I identify as a verb. Please respect that. Don't pronoun this intransitive verb into corners. No need to stake out territory. Far too noun-ish. This dancing breaks out in hives, bleeding crimson on ballroom floors when pronouned. You camouflage your graceful verbness by adopting pet pronouns, those rabid jailers that shackle you. They cut the head off the numinous verb you truly are. That's what I went through when I was young. I didn't realize I was a verb, and I kept trying to be a noun, and it never worked.
Yeah. So I am here. I am alive.
Living, dancing,
living,
listening.
dancing, living. Yes.
That's it. And that's a lot of autism is that way because
Yeah.
the mind goes so fast because it goes through like a river. Did you hear that Elon Musk said something, you wouldn't want to be me? Because is a suffering with that brilliance. It's kind of like chasms of thoughts go through you. You know, doesn't matter if he's worth 100 billion or whatever. You know, I wouldn't want that. I didn't have that like him. I had it much less.
Yeah.
But I had a little bit of that, and I can relate to that. You know, and I wouldn't want to be him. I don't care. You can give me 100 billion, give me $1 trillion. I'm still gonna. And he thinks about death all the time. He said.
Yeah. Well, Elon Musk is a whole college level course to understand
Yeah,
what
but
the
I'm just saying
hell.
that don't
Yeah.
think that because somebody has tons of money that you would want to trade places with them.
Yeah, really. Really. Yeah. Sometimes I wonder, you know, if I was homeless, what
I know
freedom
about that.
what
Not
freedom
me,
that
but I
would.
know people I'm very close to that have been. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know some homeless people.
Mm-hmm.
One of them works for me every week. He comes and works in our yard and does stuff for me and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
He's been homeless half his life, 20 years. He has a car that hardly works. But he uses drugs too much. But on the other hand, he's full of energy. He's a really hard worker.
Mm-hmm.
He's a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
You know, we think, you know, if we're in a certain place, in a certain way, all of this, we will be happy, and wouldn't it be better if, and all that bullshit, right?
And don't we define happiness so much, not you and I necessarily because we're blessed, but a lot of
Yeah,
people define it in terms of other people. That's the craziest definition. And how do we know that somebody is really happy? They can be faking it.
yeah,
Arrogant people automatically are addicted to faking stuff.
right. Yeah. Would you want to be Kim Kardashian as a
No,
woman?
no thanks. Politicians too. What is a
Yeah,
politician? I think the definition of a politician in my thing is somebody who fakes it all the time.
yeah. And it has to fake it through political necessity. It has to be a certain way. God, you have to. Now, some are better than others, for
Yeah.
sure, and some
Yeah,
are
and
much
those
worse.
who go away from faking it, that we appreciate, that have some genuineness, it's like they're very rare, like a rare diamond.
Yeah, right. Well, David, have we worked out the secret of the universe here?
Yeah, I got one last poem if you want to wrap things up because I know the hour's approaching. I
Yeah.
can find it when my mess, and I'm a mess. It's here somewhere. Give me a second. Come on. See that identifies a verb thing came out. And this is here it is. So this is we're talking about living here now, right? Right now, the adventure of your life blooms. Chest beating over past buffoonery, a buried horror movie. Nail biting over capricious what ifs, fading in nourishing sunshine. Right now, the only breathable oxygen dances into your lungs. Last week's oopsies dissolved in flooded cemeteries. Next winter's ice storms with no more power to sting. Right now, vanilla aromas waft in green gold meadows. Adolescent nosebleeds evaporated by playful zephyrs. Nightmare skunk bouquets all but vanished right now.
Will you send that one to me?
Sure.
I think that's Nobel laureate type stuff. That
Thank you
is
so much.
so friggin' amazing. That is
Thank you. That's
just
my partner's favorite poem, so you both have similar tastes.
yeah. That really sums up. Be in the now. Be in the now. Humble, real, alive, in the now, not lost in imaginary past, futures, worries, all that bullshit. Man,
Yeah.
yeah. That's really, really, that does it.
So if you end up doing that jazz thing, you'll have to let me know. Who knows? I'm not telling you what to do. I just say I love the fact that you love it so much, and
Yeah,
I can relate to when something gets me to. I cry a lot. It's part of the autistic thing.
yeah,
I will cry at soap operas. I cry at like Hallmark movies. But I'll cry at things that my cat does. But if it's that passionate,
yeah,
it seems to me, remember, I'm coming from a teaching point of view. That's basically what
yeah, yeah,
I've done
yeah,
as a teacher. It's like there are people out there who would love for you to share a little bit of your love of it. You don't have to say very much. You can say like 20 words and play the bits and pieces that you think are so magnificent. You see?
yeah. Well, it'll always be there. I mean, I have a relationship with the publisher of All About Jazz. He just sent me an email today. That's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest jazz magazine. That's where I publish my articles.
Right.
So one thing is doing that, and what I am going to do is I have set up an interview with Amanda Gardier and Charlie Ballantyne for Friday.
Great.
So interviewing some jazz musicians and talking about their life and their music and stuff like that, which will expose them to people that will check out their music, that kind of thing. So who
Oh,
knows the
sure.
form it will take,
Sure. It'll take the form it wants to take.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and actually, I have like a little two-line thing to sum up.
Yeah,
And this
please.
came to me through Michael Hall, who also is a wonderful non-dual person. Liberation simple. It turns out just to be complete death of the project of trying to be me.
Wow. Ah. Oh boy. I don't have you usually have conversations like this, David. It certainly was enlightening and refreshing and joyful. So
Thank you.
thanks for taking the time.
Okay.